Hello, this is Pixel Freak, and today, Final Fantasy IV has been released onto Android. Square Enix finally ported it over. It's been on iOS now for a little while. This is a remake of, or I should say a port of the remake that was on the DS. Came out, I don't know, sometime late in the last decade or so. This port is actually polished quite a bit. The graphics have been kind of redone. At least they're upscaled, so you're at a high resolution there. The audio is a lot better. It's a lot cleaner. They didn't compress it nearly as much. And the UI has been completely overhauled.
So we are.
Aside from those changes, I'm not sure what else they've done. So I'm going to shut up and go ahead and let you watch the dialogue parts, but I'll chime in on the rest of it.
Lord Captain! We're the Red Wings, the pride of Baron! Must we now be thieves, sent to plunder from the weak?
Enough.
But Lord Captain, the Mysidians offered no resistance, and still we cut them down.
Listen to me. We did no more than what our kingdom's peace and prosperity required us to do. The Mysidians knew too much of the crystal and its secrets. His Majesty deemed it so. We are the Red Wings of Baron. It is not our place to question the orders of our king.
Lord Captain.
Lord Captain! Monsters at the floor!
So the combat in the game is very similar to what you saw in the original 4. I should explain, 4 is actually the United States version, or I should say the North American version of 2. They got renumbered, and originally it was 4 in Japan, and a bunch of the Final Fantasies weren't released here. In fact, 2 and 3 in the US, which were 4 and 6, weren't released at all in Europe. Europe actually went, I think they went 1 to 7, or maybe even started at 7. I think they went 1 to 7. But anyways, so the numbering system's all messed up, but this is 4, which if you play the Super NES versions of Final Fantasy games, this would be 2 there. Combat's very similar. Some of the skills are a little bit different, and there are a lot of different systems in this game. They have changed it quite a bit.
Everyone all right?
Aye.
With all these monsters as of late.
Disturbing, is it not? I wonder what it bodes. We've reached the castle, my lord.
Well then, prepare for landing, men.
My lord.
So you can see a lot of the changes they've made in the game so far are obviously the graphics, and the textures aren't really great, but that's because it was made for the DS, you know, late last decade. The resolution still is pretty decent, and it definitely shows that all they've done is upscale the textures, but it still looks pretty good. The great thing that I've seen so far is that the dialogue is really well done. The localization is top-notch. I really like not only what they said, but how they said it. So I did notice the one thing that I noticed here in the first 30 minutes, which is, that's what this is. This is going to be a first 30 minutes video. I think it's actually 34 minutes long. There was a little bit of stuttering when I was walking around Castle Baron. And I think it was because that map is so large that my particular device was having a hard time with it. Not sure why that is. I'm running this on an Asus Transformer Prime, TF201. So I would expect it to run it pretty well. I'm not sure why it was that particular zone was a little bit choppy. You'll see what I'm talking about here in a moment. But aside from that, in this demo, I went all the way through the Summoner Town about a half an hour into the game. And no other choppy sections other than that. I'd say so far, though, my experience with this game, and this is not really a review of this game. I'm not going to give it a score because I really want to play it through a bit more, if I even do give it a review. I'll probably be covering this game quite a bit. I'm thinking I'm going to do a walkthrough of it. But in this first half an hour of playing, this is probably the best game that Square Enix has released so far on Android. I can't say the same thing for iOS because I know they have a lot more games on iOS, and I haven't seen exactly how those games look and feel. I think they have a Secret of Mana out there, and they have Final Fantasy Tactics as well, in addition to a whole bunch of other games. But this one does feel the most solid so far, and I would say before this game, my money was on Final Fantasy III. Not only as the best Square Enix game, but Final Fantasy III, up until this game, might have been the best RPG that you could find on Android. With this game, I'm not sure. You know, I'll go through this one and maybe I'll change my tune and start saying that Final Fantasy IV is the best RPG. But these are really good games. I would say with Final Fantasy III, I was a little bit questionable on, was it really worth $15? I think it's worth $15. Same thing with Final Fantasy Dimensions, although Dimensions was a little bit more of a retro game. Dimensions was really long, but at the same time, I felt there were some rough edges on Dimensions, that some gameplay mechanics that I didn't really like. It really had its mobileness showed a lot more. These ones, Final Fantasy III and Final Fantasy IV, they feel a lot more console-y. They feel a lot more polished, a lot more of an experience rather than something that's just there to kill time. So if you're familiar with this game already and you've never played any of the remakes for it, you'll see there are a lot of things that are renamed, like that item that the king gives you here. Normally in the original version of the game on the Super Nintendo, it was, I think, package or something like that. It was a package. And here they give you a ring. In other versions, I think it might be, and this was a signet. In other ones, I think it's a ring. I have played several different remakes of this game. This game's been remade more than any other Final Fantasy. This one's been remade and remade and remade. I shouldn't say that. This one might not have been remade the most. It might have been Final Fantasy I that's been remade the most. That one gets a little confusing because there's so many remakes and then ports of the remakes and little changes. Because I know Final Fantasy I's on PSP and Game Boy Advance, and I think it made its way to WonderSwan and Android and iOS. There's just a ton of versions of that. But Final Fantasy IV, right up there with it, you know, it was ported over to Game Boy Advance, had some small changes there. They lightened up the mood here and there in some of the spots. A piece of trivia on that, in the Game Boy Advance version, two of the things that were missing in the Game Boy Advance version was, in the scene where you get Celeste, the soldiers in the Super Nintendo version are beating her up. They hit her a couple times. In the Game Boy Advance version, I have heard that that's taken out. That's not there. In addition, there's a scene later in the game where a non-important character commits suicide in the Super Nintendo version, or in one scenario they commit suicide. And in the Game Boy Advance version, I hear that that's not possible. Now, I could be wrong. I haven't played the Game Boy Advance versions more than a couple hours. But, yeah, a couple changes. Hopefully we see something of 6 come to Android. That'd be really great. So yeah, the voiceovers in this game, an amazing addition. I know they were there for the DS. I want to go back. I'm going to go take a look at the DS version and see what exactly the differences between that version and this version are. So just here a second ago, you saw that I was kind of going up against this chair and trying to talk to it because it was giving me the exclamation point. The reason I was doing that is because it looked like I could talk to that character through the chair. But I have noticed this game, the controls are a little bit weaker than Final Fantasy III's. Final Fantasy III, it felt a little more polished. Not only that, I dig into the options here. Here briefly, I dig into the options, looking around for additional control methods. They're just not there. This is all you get is the kind of roaming thumbstick. You push the screen anywhere and it'll confirm whatever action that you're trying to do. If the exclamation point comes up, you just hit it and then boom, you activate talk or inspect something. But aside from that, you just put your thumb anywhere on the screen and it'll allow you to move it around. I don't know why, but for some reason it just feels a little bit jerkier than the Final Fantasy III controls. Not only that, I don't really like the opaque piece of this control. This control has a white little target mark in the middle of the control. I really wish it was just translucent all the way through. I mean, sure, translucent, transparent. sure it has that around it. There is a transparent piece that is in the control, but I want the whole thing to be transparent. I'd like just kind of a gray sphere, and then maybe a lighter piece if you want to do the targeting thing, but to me, I think that they were kind of reinventing the wheel a little bit here with these controls, and they should have just stuck to the same images they used for Final Fantasy III. So here's what I'm talking about. There's a little bit of jerky graphics right here. You can see it kind of losing some frames. I think I'm going to go measure the frames per second and see. I'll go back and do a playthrough real quick and see if the frames per second actually are dropping there. It looks like it's pretty clear that they actually are. It amazed me the way they made the Cid character. Those are some big lips. And that's a lot of pink. This dude, he's very, like, I don't know, flamboyant looking. And that's not to say gay in any way. I'm just saying he's very flamboyant looking. He's got 2 shades of pink, or maybe that's like a magenta and a pink and a blue. He looks like a superhero with goggles and huge lips and a beard. And very interesting character design for him. I never really liked it when I played through this game on the DS, and so I mean I could talk to how this game worked on the DS and how this game was on the DS. This game was quite amazing on the DS. I was very happy with it. On the DS though, I'm pretty sure there wasn't a difficulty setting. On this game there was, on this particular version of it, which I'm really glad there is, because in the DS version, when you play through it, that game is balls hard, like very difficult. You have to be like level 90 to 99 to win. And then there's this whole skill system in this game where you can actually transfer some skills from one character to the next, or they give you a skill as an item, and then you have to give it to a character, and depending on what skills you give to what character, as characters leave your party and then new characters arrive, you can actually get more skills. Well, having played this game once before, I knew which characters were going to leave, so I never gave skills to characters that were going to leave the party. Well, it turned out that was a bad thing to do, because you got more powerful skills from the characters that were leaving your party if you gave them skills. This might sound kind of convoluted. It's not really. I'm just bad at explaining how this thing works. Anyways, by the time you get to the end of the game, if you take my approach and never give anybody that's leaving your party skills, you don't get any of the good ones, and beating the game is very, very difficult. I had to have all of the top tier gear, and I had to have all my characters. I think they're all 95 plus or something like that. I'll have to go back and look. But the game's very difficult. In this game, I would imagine that would be the hard setting, and the normal setting is hopefully somewhat closer to what the Super Nintendo version felt like, which is actually a pretty easy game. I never really had a difficult time with the Super Nintendo version. I think I was probably 10 when I played that game, and I remember the only part that I really got stuck on was the demon wall, which is, you know, halfway, 3/4 of the way through the game. I had to level up a little bit for that piece, but other than that game, not too difficult. It was amazingly difficult for me when I went through it on DS, and I think at that point in time I was 28, something like that.
Where is the noble knight, the man who took me in as an orphan and raised me as his own? The strong, just king I once knew. Is a crystal worth all this? Robbing a peaceful people of what's theirs by right. What need could be so great? King's orders or no, there's no forgiving what we've done.
Cecil? Won't you tell me what happened? First you're sent off to Mysidia, and now to hunt some beast again so soon? Did something happen in Mysidia?
No, it's nothing.
Then why won't you look at me?
In Mysidia, we stole a crystal from people who had done no wrong. I've worn this darkened armor for so long now. There's no mote of light left in me. Not even in my heart.
You're a good man, Cecil.
I'm a coward. A coward who cannot even defy orders he knows he ought not follow.
Cecil of the Red Wings is many things, But he is no coward. Not the Cecil who I love. The king is sending you to Mist to slay the Eidolon, isn't he? If anything were to happen to you, I couldn't...
Cain will be with me. I'll be fine. It's late. You should get some rest.
Be careful.
Thank you, Rosa. But I know what I've become.
So I have to say, I love the voice acting. It's great. I would say the voice acting is probably on par with what we're seeing from the main Final Fantasy games on consoles today. They did a really good job here. It might be a little bit hokey, but I'd say it's no more hokey than the voice acting
I'll be counting on you, my friend.
Then you've nothing to fear.
from the games of today. It's very good. Like the cutscenes. It's great that they even have cutscenes. Pretty awesome. Ooh, some lighting effects. Not something that you see often on Android. I am wondering if those were even there on the DS. If I remember correctly, there's actually some additions to this game above what was in the DS version. I think someone mentioned in some forum somewhere that you can actually get all the characters at the end of this game, because Final Fantasy IV 2, I guess, on the Super Nintendo, one of the bad things is the characters, you were set in who you could have at the end of the game. You didn't get to choose. But I think I read somewhere that in the recent port to iOS that they allowed that somehow. Now, yeah, don't quote me on that because I may be wrong. I actually haven't played the iOS version. I only played the DS version, and I don't remember that being available in that particular game. So, but then again, it's been a while since I played that. I don't think I played it. When did I beat that game? I actually beat that game back in 2009. There's actually a little bit of an interesting story with that particular game. I had an interview with Nintendo for some marketing job, I think, at that point. And in a call with HR, they asked me what my last game was that I had beat. And I said Final Fantasy IV. Actually, I beat that game, and I hadn't beat that game. It was a lie. And I was like, whatever, I could beat that game. I could probably clean it up in like 2 days. So I had to go home and rush through that game, and man, I was beating my head against the wall. It took me a week to beat that game because, like I said earlier, it was a very difficult game. So anyways, I never did end up working for Nintendo. I didn't even get a real interview for that particular position. They were interested in me, and I actually talked to them about several different positions, but eventually I moved a little bit too far away to commute to Nintendo, so they contacted me on one job, and they're like, this is it, this is the perfect job, you should come and interview for this, and I was like, yeah, unfortunately I'm a little too far away now, so it's not going to work out. Would have been really cool to work at Nintendo, but yeah, didn't work out there. So, in this game, the auto attack is very interesting. It's a little different than it was in, say, Final Fantasy Dimensions. Final Fantasy Dimensions, whatever the last attack you did was, that's what you're going to do over and over. In this game, you actually program it, almost like Final Fantasy XII, except for extremely simplistic. You just equip one action ability when, like, use a specific item or a specific special attack or defend, and you will do that action over and over and over. So basically, you will set up, if you want to do an auto attack, you'd set up some kind of a repeatable system. Yeah, and then you'll just auto battle that. It's not bad. But it's probably not the most in-depth auto attack system. You see also, I went through the settings there. No control settings, as I previously mentioned. That's kind of unfortunate. I wish that was there. But you can change it a little bit, how the windows look. They gave you some different settings on looks, some different colors. I prefer gray, just because, to me, Final Fantasy is blue and gray. I kind of like gray a little better. So here I've set Cain to jump as his auto attack and Cecil to just attack. You can see here, this is how the fight screen looks. On the right-hand side, I'm not sure exactly what skip does. I think skip just skips the turn of the character that you're on, goes to the next guy. That would totally make sense. Auto is the toggle for auto battle. Escape would make you escape, and you have a pause button there as well. On the left-hand side, that's where all your different attacks come up, and you can scroll through them. If it's on auto battle. It's on auto battle now, so you can't actually see them. Yeah, the fights, they move pretty well. Pretty much what I would remembered from Final Fantasy II or the port on the DS. The game feels like it looks a little different than the DS version. It's almost like maybe they actually polished it a little bit more before they did this release. I really like all the different word changes they did to this game. Like, this is not the item store, it's sundries. Sundries, to me, kind of makes more sense, and it also plays into more of the, I don't know, fantasy piece. I actually buy one of those bestiary. It just casts Libra. That's all it does is catalog enemies. So down here to the left, there's a Chocobo Forest. I'm going to pick up a Chocobo. I noticed there wasn't a white one in here, but I don't remember if there actually isn't here, because really, I don't think you have any magic abilities yet, so you wouldn't need a white one here. That's where the big Chocobo lands if you have a carrot. I think it's actually Geishel Greens in this particular game. It was a carrot in the original. So I'll pick one of those up, and then I'll go through this first dungeon real quick before I wrap up this first look at the game. So you get 3 save spots. Interesting about that, it's almost a nostalgic move, if you ask me, to do 3 save spots, because that's what you had on the Super NES. However, I don't know, this is an Android device. You should be able to do tons if you'd like to, and I'm sure a lot of people are going to have this game on a rooted device, so you can make multiple save spots through like Titanium Backup or whatever you're using for that. But to me, it just seems like, I don't know, it's almost like it's a nostalgic play as opposed to being a functional play. I guess, though, you probably don't need more than 3 spots, unless you're obviously sharing devices. If you're sharing your device with several people or a family, and this is on a tablet, then I can see you wanting more than 3 save spots. I think that's probably not a very common occurrence, though. Seems to me as though the enemy models are a little bit better too than the version of Final Fantasy III, and a lot of that might be attributed to the fact that Final Fantasy IV's port was quite a bit after Final Fantasy III's. Final Fantasy III came out, I'm going to say, in like 2005, and I think Final Fantasy IV came out, I'm going to say, in like 2008. I'm not looking, I haven't looked this up, so I could be a little bit off, but I'm not off by much. So the developer, which is the same developer, I think it's Matrix, did both of these games. They just got better. And I'd have to say, from playing this game, I think that Square Enix has gotten better at, it might be the same, I'm assuming it's the same developer that has done both of these Android ports, or ports to Android. It seems as though they're getting a little bit better too. I'd have to say some of the other two-dimensional games that they've ported over to Android have been quite a disappointment. And I think the reason for that is just because those games were originally made for older iPhones, probably before the iPad was even imagined. And because of that, they are programmed at a very specific resolution, which happens to be very low. Those games aren't made to scale on different resolution screens, and so one of the big beefs that I have with all of those games, Chrono Trigger, Final Fantasy II, Final Fantasy I, there might be another one too that's on Android right now, a lot of times they're letterboxed. Horribly, horribly letterboxed. Enough for me to really complain about it. I don't play those games, even though I own them, simply because I just can't get over the letterboxing. I've stretched them out too, and it's not, I mean, I'd rather emulate those games than play them in that form. So I really think they need to get it together, and they need to go back and port those correctly, so that you know, future Android users will pay for them. Because right now I wouldn't recommend buying those ones, just because they're just not ported correctly for Android. They're not ported correctly for iOS either. I mean, if they have that resolution on Android, it makes me think that iOS must be the same, and I would imagine that higher-end iOS devices that are using the Retina displays, it must be letterboxed or doing something else that's not making it look very good. If they fix the letterboxing on iOS and haven't fixed it on Android, that would probably upset me even more, just because that means the code exists out there and it just needs to be moved over. That's why when you go out into the Play Store and take a look at the reviews on a lot of their games, some of them are rated really, really well, like Dimensions and Final Fantasy III, both rated very highly on the Google Play Store. But games like Final Fantasy I and Chrono Trigger both are rated very low, and it's simply because they look like very rushed and carefree ports. They really didn't seem like they wanted to give a good experience for players on this platform. And go back and get that treasure box. This is another control complaint right here. I felt like I should be able to get there, and then I couldn't do it at first, and I'm going to blame it on the controls, even though it might have been my own moronicy. Just being an idiot. But I could see that I needed to get in there. I just, for some reason, couldn't figure it out. Couldn't get in there. But I do eventually. I might get the treasure box. And then move on. All that work for a tent. Alright, so the first boss in Final Fantasy IV is the Mist Dragon. So the trick with this boss, it's kind of funny because I'm almost talking like this is a walkthrough, even though this is a first look. It's a pretty simple boss. It does turn into mist at some point in time, and when it turns into mist, you're not supposed to hit it or else it counterattacks very harshly. You need to make sure to have like maybe a potion for each of your characters, but aside from that, it's a cakewalk boss. Pretty impressed with the way that all the enemies look. It seems like there's more motion, more going on with the enemies in this game than there was in Final Fantasy III. And it might be just camera angles, but I don't know. To me, it seems like there's just more going on. The game feels a little bit more animated. This is definitely, when you look at Final Fantasy III and Final Fantasy IV in their more original versions, I mean, even if I was pinning Final Fantasy IV from the Super Nintendo against the Final Fantasy III that was put on the DS and Android and iOS, that Final Fantasy IV, it's a better game. You know, I guess in that particular case, I'd be comparing a game with 3D graphics versus not 3D graphics, but just the game systems and the storyline are so far beyond that Final Fantasy III. Final Fantasy IV is really where the series picked up and started doing kind of these epic stories. Now, somebody probably could make an argument for Final Fantasy II. I wouldn't agree with them. I think Final Fantasy II is one of the worst Final Fantasies out there. I just personally don't like it. Now, I know other people disagree with me, and that's great. That's fine. To each his own, and everybody has different opinions. But to me, I think that the stories didn't really pick up until 4, and after 4, that's really where I think every Final Fantasy after 4, well, 4 and beyond, all has great stories. All have captivating stories. Even 13, which is generally frowned upon by the majority of people, which I think it was an okay game. It just wasn't a legendary game like so many other games. Well, they all have good stories, though. There's metaphor and allegory in all of them, which is really cool. So one of the things that's interesting in this game is, as I kind of mentioned before, there's the skills system where you can equip different skills on people, and then you get new skills and you can hand those skills off to other people. The skills that you equip actually can impact what stats level up when you level up your characters. So there's some benefit to equipping skills on certain characters just so that you can get the benefits of the stats increases on your characters as you level up towards 99. That's another one of the bad things that happens to you when you don't get all the skills throughout the game. If you're going to go for maximizing your skills, you need to go online and find a really good guide on it.
The ring!
Oh, I should mention too, you just saw an achievement pop up. This is Google Play, Google Plus achievements supported on the Google Play Games API. I thought that was kind of cool that they added that. They must have just put that in the last week or so, which is
what we were sent to do?
Last month or so, I guess.
We wish this village torched.
But why?
But I think it's really cool they put achievements in the game. I'm happy about that. Yeah, I'm just so very impressed by the cutscenes. And I remember that they're a little bit less frequent later on in the game. They're real heavy in the beginning, which I think that's probably appropriate. That's the way games should be. They really need to impress you in the beginning, get you sucked into the game, and then you know, let you play.
Just because your dragon did.
I've heard of their lot. Men who can conjure eidolons. Summoners.
Then the dragon we slew was our mother's?
You're the ones who killed her dragon?
Forgive us. We had no idea this would happen to your mother.
His Majesty sent us to eliminate every last one of these people.
No.
Foul work, to be sure. We'll need to
I like
kill
Cecil's
the girl
voice,
as well.
Cecil's voice, just because it's kind of whiny, but
It's
not
her or
quite.
us, Cecil.
She's a child.
It fits him as he goes from Dark Knight to Paladin later in the game.
You'd betray your king.
If that's a spoiler for you, get on the boat, dude. Holy
Betray
crap,
him?
you haven't played
Any
Final
man
Fantasy
who wished for
IV
this
yet?
is no king of mine.
It's not too bad. Like,
I
if it was a
thought you
little
might say
whinier,
that.
I'd be like, oh, he's kind of emo sounding. But he sounds like he could be between Dark Knight and Paladin,
Not
which is
so
great.
much I'd soil the dragoon's name in his.
Then you're with me.
Baron's army is the mightiest in the world. Our flight means nothing if we remain alone. We must treat with other nations, share what we've seen. And Rosa, she must share our flight.
And she will. Thank you.
I'm not doing this for you.
Huh?
Quickly, we mustn't linger here. What of the girl?
We take her with us. Come. It's not safe here. Take my hand.
No!
We've no time. Use force if you must.
Stay away!
Wait!
Leave me alone! I hate you!
Yeah, she goes straight up Super Saiyan. Yeah, Rydia is probably my favorite character in this game. I just loved the idea of... This is the first game that actually had summons. Well, no. 3 had summons too. This was the first one that I played that had summons, I should say. Titan makes his magnificent introduction. So this is it. This is actually where I'm leaving off for this kind of intro to the game. Totally, to me, it's not a review, so I'm not going to give it a score, but totally, this game's worth $16. If any game is worth $16, this game is worth $16. Don't question it. If you want to play a Final Fantasy game, go play this game. Make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Until next time, this has been Pixel Freak.